swim, bike, and run day. Woo! Cause it's breakfast with Bob.
And Poncho Man, everyone. Welcome to day 4 of Breakfast with Bob from Kona and Huggo's on the Rocks. My name is Bob Babbitt, brought to you by Master Spas as fuels go longer. HOKA Let's Fly, deboer wetsuits, Form Smart Swim goggles, Zoot Sports, original triathlon brand, Quintana Premium Plus Sports, and of course our Challenged Athletes Foundation. Our next guest, only one of my favorite people on the planet, Mr. Cory Foulk joins us. Cory, how you doing, bud?
Good morning, Bob. It's so good to see you.
It's always such a treat, and every time we come over here, the bikes get more and more expensive, $10,000, $12,000, $20,000 bikes. And as a long-time Ironman guy, back in, 96, 97, that era?
Yeah, it was like 96, I think, yeah.
You felt like, okay, people need to know that you don't need a $10,000 bike to be an Ironman. And so what'd you do?
You know, I looked around me and I saw the Lotus bicycles and all of these exotic things happening, and $8,000 back then.
Yeah.
And I recognized that, I started this as a beach sport in the 70s.
Right.
And the question was always whether to swim in your shoes or run barefoot. You know what I mean?
That was very cool.
So it really, I thought it would be worthwhile to put a message out there that you could be an athlete at this level and do it on a minimal equipment, just regular equipment. You didn't have to have $20,000. You didn't have to mortgage your home to be a triathlete.
And so you went out and got yourself a Schwinn Typhoon, right? Schwinn Typhoon that weighed
61 pounds. Was it all? As it all settled, it was amazing because it was the original metal frame, and it had a basket on the front.
No gears.
A rack on the back. It had a 32-19 single speed, right?
Okay.
With the cast iron crank arms. You remember those days.
Oh, yeah.
It had an aerial on the back. I was able, fortunately, to get a horn and a bell mounted on it. Straws on the spokes.
Of course.
For aerodynamics.
And you Dayglow yellow.
It was kind of a neon green yellow. It was what was on sale in the paint aisle of the hardware store. And
the paint probably cost more than the bike.
It did. It cost about $5 more than the bike.
So now you show up for the Ironman with your 61-pound Schwinn Typhoon and roll that in the transition. And what they say to you?
I took the kickstand off of it because I knew I'd have to go through tech inspection.
Right.
And there's no way they would let you have a kickstand on your bike.
Of course.
And
it's the Ironman.
It's Ironman. It's the World Championships. Come on. And so I rolled into the tech inspection, and they were a little bit set back, but it was okay. They made me take the kickstand off the bike, which I had a crescent wrench in the basket just to do that. I'm kind of a prepared guy. And away we went. They put a sticker on it, wheeled it off into the transition area, and away we went. I was walking out of the tech.
Yeah.
And somebody ran me down, and they flagged me down. They said, hey, you got to put the kickstand back on. And I go, what do you mean? And they said, well, the tires are too wide to fit in the bike racks.
I love that.
So I still had the crescent wrench. It was cool. And I had the kickstand in my hands, And so I went back and I put a kickstand on it. And the coolest thing about that was because they couldn't put it anywhere. They set the bike up right at the front of the pro rack. It's like there's like Tommy Hellriegel's bike, and then there's like my bike.
Yes.
It's like, wow, this is nice. This is going to give me a big advantage on that bike leg.
So you come out of the swim, and you go to your bike, Hawaiian shirt. And what type of bike shoes were you using?
I wasn't using shoes. You
weren't using bike shoes?
No bike shoes. It was a weight concern.
Because you had a 61-pound bike.
Yeah, a 61-pound bike. I wanted to save a few ounces.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Barefoot?
Barefoot on the bike. That had never been done.
Barefoot? You're the only guy in history to do this bike barefoot, I think.
I am, and I really recommend not doing it barefoot. I can honestly say, yeah.
So in the basket, Jolly Ranchers,
10 pounds of, it was Halloween time.
Yes.
So I got a sale at Long's on Jolly Ranchers. So I had a big bag of Jolly Ranchers in the basket. Same crescent wrench. You never know when you're going to work on the bike.
Exactly.
I did put a pair of tennis shoes in the basket in case I had to run the bike up hills on the bike course. I really wanted to make the cutoff. Like, if you're going to do something like that, if you're going to stunt it, you got to make the cutoff.
You're right. You got to be real.
That's the whole thing, So I didn't need to use them. It was great.
So you're out on the bike, but you're also doing reporting for local radio stations. So you had a roll of quarters, right?
It was the funnest thing ever. Emily Gale, I don't know, you probably know Emily Gale, right? Okay, so Emily Gale wasn't able to get a media pass for the course. And so she came up to me at the swim start and said, "Hey, Cory, can you call in live reports from the course?" And I go, "Well, yeah, I'm going to have time on my hands." Sure. And so she says, "Well, hey, hold on, I'll be right back." And I thought she was going to go get me like a cell phone, even though they were big back then. I thought, yeah, I've got a basket, who cares? She comes back with a roll of quarters, and it had her phone number on it.
So you could call in.
So I could
call in payphones.
Right, I could stop at payphones
and call in
live
reports from the race.
And I did. It was great. It was really fun.
This is Cory from the course.
Yeah, I'm calling.
Everything's great. I'm still on my
from
cruiser.
the laundromat in Javi.
I'm still going 12 miles an hour.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a downhill pace. That was a downhill pace.
So how hard was it on the cruiser?
It was plenty hard. It was plenty hard. I had solid rubber tires. They didn't have the same kind of rolling resistance, but it was enjoyable. It was a good way to spend the day, and I passed a lot of people going into Javi just because of the gearing. I had
You had one gear?
I had one gear, but it was the right gear for the climb into Javi. And so I passed a whole bunch of people going up there.
That you ruined their life, I bet.
Oh, my God, it was horrifying for them. And then I went around the turnaround. It's even worse. I went around the turnaround. I put the kickstand down, and I went over and I used the payphone to call in a race report.
Yes.
So they passed me again. So then I got on this 61-pound beast, which was a downhill rocket
machine. Yeah.
And I went by them going down the hill out of Javi like they were pinned to the road. And what I had practiced was putting my feet up in the basket in the arrow position, because it was very important to save seconds.
Of course.
Yeah.
You're trying to win the race.
Well, I was working at it,
So you had your feet up on the basket, you're in the arrow position.
Toes pointed. I'm like kind of in a pike position,
passing
coming out
people
of Javi, passing them
who you've already passed before.
Right, I already passed them before.
So now they get a double dose of humility.
They never came back.
You ruined it. They left the sport forever.
They left the sport forever, yeah.
And did you stay on the course the whole time, or did you go and explore a little bit?
No, I didn't really get off the course much, During the run, I was...
And you wore shoes in the run?
No, I was barefoot on the run.
Did you run the barefoot?
Yeah.
You went barefoot for a run, too? I did not know that.
Yeah. So, it just seemed normal.
And did you make the bike car cut off by a lot? A little?
Yeah,
tight?
not very much. I mean, like 20 minutes or something.
Ooh,
it was pretty darn
Was it
close.
getting pretty testy? It's not like you're wearing a Garmin or something.
Yeah, it wasn't like I had that, but I'm pretty aware of the time here. I live here in the sun, angles and stuff, and so I knew it was going to be sketchy. But going into T2, I was able to pass a guy on a Lotus at the very end on that big downhill. It went down into the Kona surf at that time. And then I just dropped the kickstand and started running. It was the coolest thing ever. I had the fastest transition. It was like a zero transition time.
Because, you got your barefoot, and you just leave the bike and go.
Running in a Speedo.
Hawaiian shirt?
I had a Fred Flintstone Hawaiian print, which is really hard to come by.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to showcase that. And so I had tie-dyed Speedos and a Fred Flintstone Hawaiian
for both
print.
bike and run?
Just for the run. I did the bike in Speedos, yeah.
Oh, it's just Speedos and with a different Hawaiian shirt.
Yeah, no shirt.
No shirt?
No shirt.
And they didn't disqualify you back then?
No, it was before that rule, yeah.
So there's a lot of rules that you led to, I think.
There were. I think the covering your torso rule.
Yes.
I know that all athletes have to wear appropriate footwear.
For both the bike and the run.
For the bike and the run. and the literally no beach cruiser rule, and that might have been the funnest thing of the whole affair, was opening up the rules the next year. I qualified the next year, and reading in the rules, no beach cruisers.
You changed history. I like that.
I changed the course of triathlon.
So you remember what your time was for finishing the race?
I don't know, it's around 12 hours or something
Still
like that.
12 hours?
Yeah.
On a beach cruiser, riding barefoot and running barefoot.
I had a really good run.
How fast did you run barefoot?
I don't know, I ran around 3 hours or something, it seems like.
That's unbelievable.
It was cool. It was the end of the day, so it was dark.
Yeah.
And it was cool. The pavement wasn't hot. It wasn't 90 degrees out there. And so it worked out okay.
Have you done a lot of running barefoot?
Yes, I still do.
Okay. So now you can't come back with a cruiser. You've qualified again.
Mm-hmm.
So you get yourself a Lotus and go do the $8,000 bike. What'd you do?
No, I did go back to regular tri gear. Of course, it was fun. And I spent about a decade of more normal, within reason. I did Ironman Revisited. We did some good stuff, right? But then I got the idea, and I think that you were formative in this. As a matter of fact, he caused it. I did it on a fixed gear bike.
I remember that.
Yeah, I did it on a fixed gear bike. And that was significantly harder than on the beach cruiser.
Because you're on those downhills, you must, 220?
Yeah, it was like
RPM?
200 plus cadence on the downhills. And I just told you beforehand, you asked me how fast I was going to go. I said, about 6 hours, whatever. And so the night before, I did the math, and I go, well, I'm going to have to ride about 20, 21 miles an hour to do that. And so I just started riding at 20, 21 miles an hour out of the swim. I didn't realize that was a 130 cadence. I didn't have a Garmin or any of that stuff. Well, after a few hours of a 130 cadence with no interruption, my legs started
They were screaming.
They just started coming apart. It was like they weren't even mine. It was really scary. We agreed to have a divorce. We just separated.
You and your legs were like,
yeah,
I'm done.
I'm done. That was it. We went different ways.
And then on the way out to Javi, the gearing was probably pretty good going up the hill.
Yeah, it was
but not
good.
great going down the hill.
That same tuck toe position downhill was a real affair. That was all eccentric work on your legs, and it was really so hard. It was so hard. When I got off that bike, I couldn't even stand up. I literally did the Julie Moss crawl out of T2. Diana Birch is looking at me like, what
are you doing?
What are you doing,
Did you wear shoes that year?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So now you're wearing running shoes.
Yeah.
You finish in the fixie. And then when you open up the rule book the next year, was there a new rule?
Yeah, there's no fixed gear bikes, right? So
you're a game changer, my friend.
Well, I had my moments.
So
you're the one that took camping gear on the bike. So
good point.
Okay.
But I don't think people understand that when you're not doing this crazy stuff, you're an environmental architect. You are designing hotels in Las Vegas that actually generate energy. You're doing a lot to really help what's going on in the world with making sure that these buildings are self-sufficient.
Yes, roughly 20 years ago, we started a direction that today is called net positive, and there wasn't language for it then. But it's the idea that you can create buildings that are engines for change, that create more water than they use, that create more energy than they use, that take more air pollution out of the air than their occupants put into the air going to work. And so we've been doing POCs at a large scale for those kind of projects. Even up to and including this morning, we're working on a really exciting project.
Tell me about that project, because that reef sounds unbelievable.
Yeah, so what we're looking at doing is setting aside 52,000 acres in Belize, a coastal piece 6 miles deep and 20 miles long, offshore building 2 super towers, and those buildings would have 3D printed protein scaffolds around the legs. that emulate coral skeleton forms.
Right.
And then Dr. David Vaughan from Great Britain has agreed to populate those with coral. And we're going to genetically select coral for a pH and temperature change to resist global warming while creating new reefs in Belize. So very interesting. Meanwhile, the buildings will make more energy than they use. They'll make more water than they use. So really, really, really good stuff, and amazing people that we're involved with. Just amazing people.
The other side of you, when we first started chatting, was you had hip resurfacing years and years ago. And back then, people were like, if you got hip replacement, hip resurfacing, you'll never run again.
Yeah, that was the case. That was absolutely the case
And
back then.
so when you went to India, because they weren't doing it here, and had hip resurfacing, and how many Ironman, double Ironman, things like that have you done since you had your hip resurfaced?
I'm going to say I probably have 30-some Ironman races, including 6 or 7 at the World Championships.
Yes.
And that includes the fixed gear
Right.
run. And then I have about 20 Ultraman distance finishes on that hip and that technology.
Yes.
And so I've really done a proof of concept for that hip for them. Yeah.
Amazing. And you're still out there running, riding, swimming.
Still works perfectly fine. I was able to offer an opinion to Scott Tinley, who
Yes.
had a similar
Yeah, I connected
condition.
you guys, yes.
You connected us, and Tinley went ahead with the same surgery. He's had great luck. Frank Shorter has done the same thing.
Yep.
He's had great luck. So any level of athleticism can be supported by technology like that today.
Cory, you are a Renaissance man. It's such a treat to get to chat with you on the show, and thank you for everything you've done for this amazing event. You're sort of the behind-the-scenes guy. People don't know how much you do to make this race special.
You know, I've been here for every one of them, and I drug trash barrels up my driveway to set up an aid station for the first one, and started a dozen aid stations since then. I just love being part of it. Even if I do the event, I volunteer for the event at the same time, and I'll be here forever. I love it.
Cory Foulk has been our guest to kick off Breakfast with Bob Day 4. Poncho Man, take us out.
It's a long Thursday, gonna swim, bike, and run day. Cause it's Breakfast with Bob.
Poncho Man, everybody!